This continent features capital cities where dinner reservations before 10 o'clock at night are practically illegal, and yet it runs on a completely different kind of clock that tests your sanity every single day. We're landing in South America, but forget everything the glossy brochures promised you about laid-back tropical vibes and easygoing rhythms. Beneath the stunning mountain peaks and vibrant street art lies a labyrinth of unwritten social rules, sudden cultural collisions, and daily habits that will completely rewrite your understanding of how society functions. Most travelers step off the plane thinking they're ready for anything, only to find themselves baffled by the first interaction at a corner store, or completely lost when trying to catch a simple bus. Today we're pulling back the curtain on the subtle, startling, and deeply fascinating culture shocks of South America that no guidebook dares to mention. We are going to break down 5 pillars of everyday life that operate on logic entirely their own, starting with the way time itself bends to the human will, rather than the ticking of a mechanical watch. Let's step straight into the first shock, the fluid, elastic, and deeply misunderstood concept of time across this massive, diverse continent. When you invite someone for dinner in Buenos Aires at 8 o'clock, you aren't actually eating at 8. In fact, if you arrive on the dot, you'll likely find your host standing in their doorway wearing a towel, frantically chopping onions while listening to tango music, completely unbothered by the fact that you're standing on the welcome mat. Time here isn't a strict boundary. It's a flexible guideline, a soft suggestion that bends around human connection. If a party invitation says 9, nobody crosses the threshold before 10. If a bus schedule says departure at noon, you can safely assume the driver is finishing his third empanada down the street. This isn't about laziness or disrespect. It's an entirely different philosophical stance on what matters most. While Western cultures treat minutes as rare currency, South American cultures view human presence as the ultimate priority. A conversation on the street corner will always outweigh a schedule on a screen. For a traveler wired to run on strict itineraries, this creates a profound psychological friction. You feel rushed, ignored, and chronically anxious until you finally surrender to the flow. You realize that stressing over a delayed train is pointless when you can use those extra 40 minutes to observe the chaotic, beautiful dance of street life around you. You watch vendors balancing towers of lottery tickets on their heads, stray dogs navigating traffic with surprising street smarts, and neighbors leaning out of second-story windows to gossip across narrow alleys. You learn that in this part of the world, rushing is considered an insult to the present moment, a sign that your mind is elsewhere rather than fully engaged with the person standing right in front of you. But time is just the opening act. The moment you pay your first restaurant bill, you crash headfirst into our second major culture shock, the bewildering politics of tipping. In North America, the tip is a sacred ritual, a mathematical certainty, a silent agreement between server and customer. In South America, it's an absolute minefield. In many traditional neighborhoods and local fondas across Colombia or Peru, leaving a standard 20% tip isn't just unnecessary. It can cause genuine confusion, or worse, make the server feel patronized. They might chase you down the cobblestone street to hand you back your extra bills, genuinely believing you left your money behind by mistake. On the flip side, upscale restaurants in cosmopolitan hubs like Santiago or Sao Paulo have fully imported Western tipping models, complete with a polite suggestion added directly to the bottom of the bill, known as la propina. But even then, the unspoken rules change, depending on whether you're sitting at a high-end sushi bar or grabbing a quick pastel at an open-air market stall. Try leaving a tip at a neighborhood bakery in Rio de Janeiro, and you'll get a look of utter bewilderment, perhaps accompanied by a friendly chuckle at your foreign eccentricities. Understanding who gets rewarded, when it's appropriate, and why cash in hand sometimes insults rather than helps is a delicate art form that takes months to master. It forces you to look closer at how labor, dignity, and service are valued differently across economic classes. In many family-run establishments, the person serving you your food is the owner or a relative, someone who takes immense pride in their culinary craft and views the transaction as a social exchange of hospitality rather than a strictly commercial service industry job. When you try to overcompensate with money, it disrupts that delicate social balance and implies that they are somehow in a position of subservience rather than hosting you as an honored guest in their dining room. And speaking of human interaction, nothing prepares you for the third shock, the intense, boundary-blurring world of personal space and relationships. If you're used to the polite, cautious distance of North American or Northern European social circles, South America will feel like an immediate and overwhelming immersion in human warmth. People stand extraordinarily close when they talk. They touch your arm to emphasize a point, look you dead in the eye with piercing intensity, and ask deeply personal questions within 5 minutes of meeting you. Where you're from, what you earn, why you're traveling alone, and whether you're married are standard opening pleasantries, not intrusive interrogations. This directness can be jarring at first, making you feel as though your personal boundaries are being breached. But it stems from an inherent cultural belief that strangers are simply friends you haven't shared a mate tea or a glass of pisco with yet. Romance, too, operates on a completely different frequency. Relationships move at lightning speed. A first date isn't a cautious coffee meeting to test the waters. It's an intense, hours-long emotional marathon involving deep family histories, passionate political debates, and immediate introductions to a circle of lifelong friends. There is very little middle ground between being a total stranger and being treated like family. This radical intimacy can feel intoxicating, wrapping you in a blanket of belonging you never knew you needed. You find yourself invited to Sunday barbecues after knowing someone for only 20 minutes, and you are expected to show up, bring a bottle of wine, and participate fully in the noisy, chaotic family debates. But it can also trigger a mild panic attack for anyone accustomed to emotional armor and safe boundaries. You quickly learn that vulnerability isn't optional here. It's the baseline of social survival. You cannot hide behind polite small talk about the weather when someone is looking directly into your eyes and asking you what truly breaks your heart. Yet, navigating these intense social connections requires moving through the city, which brings us straight to our fourth shock: the wildly chaotic, improvisational, and adrenaline-fueled public transportation systems. Forget clean, silent subway cars where everyone stares silently at their phones and avoids making eye contact at all costs. In South America, public transit is a living, breathing, theatrical performance. Take the iconic microbuses of Lima or the colorful chivas of rural Colombia. These aren't just vehicles. They are rolling cultural hubs complete with blaring salsa music, vendors hopping on board to sell everything from bottled water to handmade jewelry, and drivers who treat every avenue like a Formula One qualifying round. Bus stops are often just a vague suggestion agreed upon by locals and drivers through frantic hand gestures and quick whistles. If you want off, you don't pull a cord. You yell, "Baja," at the top of your lungs, while the bus slows down just enough for you to leap gracefully onto the asphalt, trusting your momentum to keep you upright. The metro systems in cities like Santiago and Medellin are astonishingly modern, clean, and efficient, standing in stark, fascinating contrast to the street-level chaos just above ground. But whether you're crammed into a subterranean train during rush hour or hanging onto the handrail of a speeding colectivo winding through mountain passes, the unwritten rules of transit etiquette are strict. You always stand up for elderly passengers instantly, without a moment's hesitation. You pass coins forward for strangers to pay the fare, creating a temporary human conveyor belt of trust, and you keep your belongings close with a watchful eye, balancing urban vigilance with community spirit. It's a masterclass in collective choreography, proving that even in absolute chaos, a silent social contract holds everything together, reminding you that civilization here relies less on electronic turnstiles and more on human cooperation. And finally, we arrive at the fifth and perhaps most humbling culture shock of all, the illusion of language. You might spend months downloading translation apps, memorizing complex verb conjugations, and practicing your textbook Spanish or Brazilian Portuguese before boarding your flight. You feel prepared, confident that your diligent studying will pay off. The moment you land in a bustling market in Cartagena or a neighborhood cafe in Montevideo, you realize textbook language is practically useless. Slang, regional idioms, and local cadences transform the language into an entirely new creature. In Argentina, the word for a simple street boy or colloquial expression carries an entirely different weight thanks to the unique lilt of lunfardo, a slang born from the immigrant ports of Buenos Aires that mixes Italian dialects with traditional Spanish. In Chile, people speak at a supersonic velocity, swallowing the ends of every single word and inventing their own vocabulary, until even native Spanish speakers from neighboring countries stand there, nodding politely while understanding almost nothing. And across Brazil, Portuguese isn't just spoken, it's sung with a rhythmic cadence, a soft intonation, and a rich lexicon of slang that changes completely from the Afro-Brazilian warmth of Salvador to the fast-paced, industrial hustle of Sao Paulo. You quickly discover that true communication goes far beyond vocabulary or grammatical perfection. A genuine smile, a humble acknowledgement of your own confusion, and the willingness to laugh at yourself when you accidentally use the wrong word will open more doors than any advanced grammar book ever could. You learn to listen with your eyes, to read body language, and to accept that total understanding isn't a prerequisite for experiencing deep human connection. You realize that pointing at a menu item with an enthusiastic thumbs up and a polite, por favor, often achieves much more than struggling to pronounce a complicated dish with a rigid accent. These culture shocks aren't obstacles to be avoided or annoyances to complain about on travel forums. They are the true heartbeat of South America travel. They challenge your assumptions, strip away your comfort zone, and force you to see the world through a radically different lens. They teach you patience in the face of delay, humility in the face of social norms you don't fully understand, and resilience when your linguistic safety net vanishes. But as you begin to decode the rhythms of time, tipping, relationships, transit, and language, you start to realize that this continent holds even deeper secrets. Just over the horizon, tucked